Beneath the cold sweep of Terran space, Captain Elias Kane stood alone in the observation deck of the battleship Resolute. His reflection glimmered faintly against the glass, his sharp features hardened by years of service and long nights spent staring into the abyss. At 43, he carried himself with the controlled poise of a soldier who had seen too much and survived more than most should. His gray eyes, often unreadable to subordinates, now held a trace of unease. Humanity was at peace, or so the Council claimed, but Kane had always distrusted calm seas. They hid storms waiting to break. The storm came as a whisper, wrapped in static, from the edge of forgotten space. The Resolute's comms officer had delivered the message with pale knuckles and a trembling voice. Kane replayed it again and again, the grainy voice of a dying alien elder, speaking words almost no one remembered. The Thauri, a species so old, so obscure, they had become little more than a footnote in Earth's historical archives. But Kane remembered. Every officer had been taught the story as myth, as a fragment of Earth's near extinction. Centuries ago, when humanity's first colony ships were hunted by a predator empire, it was the Thauri who intervened. Small, fragile, and technologically unimpressive, they had thrown themselves between Earth's desperate fleet and certain annihilation. They paid in lives, ships, and blood, expecting nothing but a promise. Humanity gave them one. If ever the Thauri called, Earth would answer. Most have forgotten. Promises eroded with time, especially when politics and survival consumed the daily life of a civilization. But as Kane listened to the message, the words were unmistakable. We call the debt. We are dying. The Dominion burns our skies. Remember us. He turned the recording off and let silence fill the deck. The Zeroth Dominion was not a name spoken lightly. They were a machine of empire, expanding with calculated cruelty, subjugating species not for resources, but for dominance. They reduced civilizations to indentured servants and stripped planets bare until nothing but ash remained. Against them, the Thauri had no chance. Against them, most believed humanity would have no chance either. Kane's second-in-command, Commander Rylan Voss, approached quietly. Younger, broad-shouldered, his face carried the open eagerness of a man who had not yet been hardened by despair. "It's genuine," he said, breaking the silence. "Cross-checked 3 times through the archives. The Thauri have invoked the oath." Kane's jaw tightened. And the Council? Cautious. Some argue the promise was symbolic, not binding. Others fear a war with the Dominion would be suicide. Voss hesitated before adding, "But I think they'll listen to you. You have weight with the Council. You fought the Skarn uprising. They trust you." Trust. Ken almost laughed. Politicians trusted soldiers only when they needed sacrifices. But still, the weight of this decision bore down on him. He pictured the Thauri, small and fragile, making their desperate stand centuries ago. Humanity had been young then, helpless, vulnerable. The Thauri had acted not out of logic, but out of loyalty to something larger. Kane could not let that sacrifice fade into dust. When he finally spoke, his voice carried iron. "We swore an oath, Rylan. Humanity's word means nothing if we let them die forgotten." The following days became a blur of heated debates and sleepless nights. Kane stood before the Terran High Council, 12 men seated in a semicircle beneath the banners of Earth and her colonies. He presented the message, the ancient oath, and the threat posed by the Dominion. His words cut through the chamber, measured and unyielding. "You fear war with the Dominion. I fear dishonor. If humanity cannot keep its word, then we are nothing but liars among the stars. And if we abandon allies when they call, who will ever stand with us when the day comes that we are the ones crying out for help?" Arguments erupted. Some counselors claimed the Thauri were insignificant, not worth the blood of Terran soldiers. Others insisted humanity lacked the fleet strength to challenge a galactic empire. But a few leaned forward, eyes sharpened by the weight of history. The vote was cast at midnight. Unanimous. Humanity would honor its oath. News spread like wildfire across the colonies. To Kane's surprise, men lined up to volunteer before the official call even went out. They came from mining colonies, agricultural worlds, orbital stations, pilots, engineers, marines. Many had no memory of the Thauri, But the story of a debt repaid, of loyalty beyond reason, resonated with them. For too long, humanity had been seen as opportunists among the stars. But this was different. This was honor. Voss approached Kane during the fleet assembly, excitement flashing in his eyes. They're calling it Task Force Retribution. Dreadnoughts from Mars, destroyers from Europa, carriers from the Belt. It's the largest mobilization since the uprising. Kane studied the warships forming in orbit, sleek hulls bristling with weapons kept hidden from alien eyes until now. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries, dismissed as a stubborn but relatively minor species. That illusion was about to shatter. He felt no triumph, only gravity. This was not conquest. This was a promise being carved into the stars with fire. Late one evening, alone in his quarters, Kane activated the Fowry message once more. The alien voice cracked with desperation. "We call the debt. We are dying." He closed his eyes and let the words settle into his bones. The Fowry had once shielded humanity from extinction. Now humanity would shield them. As the Resolute prepared for departure, Kane gathered his officers. "Make no mistake," he said, his voice carrying across the deck. "We are not sailing for glory. We are not sailing for conquest. We sailed because centuries ago, when humanity was weak, the Fowry stood for us. Now we stand for them. The galaxy will watch. And when this is done, they will know that humanity never forgets." Voss grinned, fierce and unshaken. "Then let them tremble." The fleet engines ignited, burning trails into the darkness. Humanity was moving toward war, not for survival, not for empire, but for a promise. And in the quiet before the stars blurred into faster-than-light motion, Elias Kane felt the weight of history pressed down upon him. What began as a whisper from the past would soon become a roar that echoed across the galaxy. He turned to the stars one last time before the jump. The debt will be paid. The universe, unaware, shivered on the edge of change. The silence of departure had been replaced by the clamor of preparation. Task Force Retribution gathered like a storm above Earth's blue curve, ships aligning into tight formations, their hulls reflecting the distant sun like polished blades. Within the fleet, men worked with relentless determination, welding armor plates, testing weapons, drilling in endless cycles of readiness. The air carried a current of anticipation. This was no ordinary campaign. They were not marching to seize, but to honor. Captain Elias Kane walked the length of the Resolute's main hangar, observing the pilots who moved like dancers between sleek fighter craft. Their conversations were brief, their eyes sharp. They understood the weight of their mission. For many, this was their first deployment beyond Terran borders. Kane studied their faces and saw a reflection of his younger self. Eager, untested, and determined to prove that humanity's word was forged in steel. Commander Ryland Voss strode at his side, datapad in hand. "We've integrated crews from 12 colonies. Not a single man requested reassignment. Every one of them volunteered, even knowing what they face." He spoke with quiet pride. Kane nodded. Loyalty is rare in the galaxy, but it is humanity's one constant. Let's make sure it doesn't cost them their lives too cheaply. Across the fleet, the final councils of war were held. Generals and admirals dialed in through secure channels, but Kane insisted on brevity. Their enemy was not an abstraction. The Zeroth Dominion was a blade already at the Fowry's throat, and humanity's delay would mean their extinction. Kane kept the strategy simple. Hit fast, hit hard, shatter the Dominion blockade, and secure the Fowry homeworld. It was a plan that required precision and resolve rather than overwhelming numbers, because humanity did not have overwhelming numbers to spare. Voss leaned close during one briefing, lowering his voice. "You realize the Dominion will laugh at this fleet. To them, we are insects." Kane did not look up from the tactical display. "Then let them laugh, Ryland. It will make their shock sweeter when the laughter dies in their throats." As the fleet finalized preparations, whispers spread beyond humanity's borders. In alien markets and council chambers, news traveled faster than the ships themselves. Earth was mobilizing for war against the Zeroth Dominion. The reactions were divided. Many scoffed at the arrogance. A minor species daring to challenge a galactic power was the stuff of tavern jokes. Yet others spoke in hushed tones, troubled by the implications. Humanity had not been coerced into this fight, nor bribed with promises of wealth. They were moving for something alien to galactic politics: honor. Aboard the Resolute, Kane convened his senior officers one last time before departure. Major Darius Holt, commander of the Marine Division, stood rigid in his armor, every inch the soldier, broad-chested, scarred, and sharp-eyed. Holt had fought in more ground campaigns than most men survived. Where Kane was steel, Holt was iron. "You'll lead the ground assault when we reach the Thauri capital," Kane told him. Holt gave a curt nod. "We'll hold it, sir. I'll see to it myself." His voice carried no bravado, only certainty. Voss leaned forward. "We'll need every edge we have. Dominion ground forces are relentless." Holt's scarred lips twisted into a grim smile. "Relentless won't save them when my Marines break their lines." The room was quiet for a moment, filled with a silent understanding that many of those Marines would never return. Kane looked from face to face, men who had bound their fates together in this gamble. He felt the weight of command press heavily against his chest, but he allowed none of it to touch his voice. "Then it is decided. We leave at dawn cycle." When the final preparations ended, Kane addressed the entire fleet. His voice carried across ships and stations, broadcast into the ears of thousands who stood at attention in their posts. "We are watched. The galaxy doubts us, mocks us, dismisses us. They believe humanity cannot stand against the Dominion. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps we will fall. But I say this: when the Thauri saved our ancestors, they did not weigh the odds. They did not ask if we were worth the blood they shed. They gave it freely, and we owe them everything. Today, we repay that debt. If we succeed, the galaxy will know our word is iron. If we fail, we will fail with honor, and our enemies will remember the fire that consumed them." The silence after his words was absolute, broken only by the roar of voices rising from every channel, men shouting their affirmation. Kane closed the channel, letting the echo of their resolve settle into his bones. Departure was a spectacle. Engines lit the void as the fleet rose from Earth's orbit, 1,000 burning trails cutting through the dark. Families on colonies and space stations watched with pride and fear as the ships vanished into faster than light. Humanity had made its choice, and there was no turning back. On the command deck, Kane stood beside Voss as the stars stretched into streams of light. For a moment, the weight of centuries pressed close, the oath of long-dead men binding their every step. Kane whispered, almost to himself, "They think us reckless. They think us weak. Let them. Soon they will see." Voss gave him a sidelong look, a grin flickering across his face. "And when they see, Captain, they'll tremble." The Resolute surged forward into the unknown, carried with it not just a fleet, but the honor of an entire species. Somewhere ahead, the Thauri clung to survival, their skies burning under the Dominion's assault. Somewhere ahead, humanity's promise waited to be fulfilled. And as the fleet plunged deeper into the void, the stars themselves seemed to lean closer, as if anticipating the clash to come. through the sky. One dropship disintegrated in flames before touching ground. Its loss registered in Holt's clenched jaw, but nowhere else. The survivors landed in the heart of the ruined city, amid shattered towers and burning streets. The Dominion soldiers were waiting, towering forms clad in black armor, their weapons bristling with cruel efficiency. They advanced in perfect lines, believing discipline alone would crush the human intruders. Holt charged first, shotgun blazing, Marines surging behind him. The impact was thunderous, two tides colliding in blood and metal. The Dominion fought without mercy. So did the humans. Holt carved a path through rubble and fire, his men driving forward yard by yard. When a Thauri elder stumbled into the street, cornered by Dominion blades, Holt barreled through the fray and shot their attackers down at point-blank range. He pulled the trembling figure to his feet, his voice rough but resolute. "You are not alone. Your debt is our honor." The elder's wide, luminous eyes glistened as if beholding something impossible. Humanity had come. Overhead, Kane directed the battle with unyielding focus. Dominion reinforcements poured in, but humanity's fleet moved with precision they had not expected. Destroyers executed coordinated maneuvers, drawing enemy ships into ambushes where dreadnought cannons tore them apart. Fighters pierced capital ship shields to deliver crippling blows from within. Every engagement left Dominion lines more ragged, their certainty eroded by the sheer ferocity of human will. Yet the cost was real. Ships burned. Men screamed over broken comms before silence claimed them. Marines fell in smoking streets, their blood soaking into alien stone. Kane felt every loss as another weight on his chest, but he pressed forward. "Signal to all units," he ordered, voice hoarse but unwavering. "No retreat. We hold until the Thauri skies are free." After hours that felt like days, the Dominion lines faltered. One flagship exploded in a storm of ruptured plasma, shockwaves rippling across the void. Holt's Marines breached the palace grounds, planting Terran banners in shattered earth. The Thauri Council, once moments from annihilation, watched as Dominion troops fell back, retreating in disbelief. Humanity had not only met them, they had broken them. On the bridge of the Resolute, Voss exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "They're pulling back. By God, they're retreating." Kane's gaze remained fixed on the collapsing enemy formation. He felt no triumph, only grim resolve. This was not victory. This was a message. He opened a channel, broadcasting not only to the Dominion fleet, but to every listening station across the stars. His voice rang like a verdict. Humanity does not forget. Centuries ago, the Thauri saved us when we were weak. Today, we repay that debt. Know this, our word is iron. Our loyalty is fire. And if you raise your hand against those we call ally, we will repay you in kind. Remember this day before you ever dare call us enemy. His words spread like wildfire, transmitted across systems, relayed through terrified witnesses and stunned observers. In that moment, the galaxy learned what it meant when humanity kept a promise. The Dominion fled into the dark, their arrogance shattered. The Thauri stood alive, trembling but free, staring in disbelief at the human banners planted in their soil. Holt raised his helmet beneath one arm, his face scarred but fierce. "It's done," he reported, his voice low but carrying. Kane did not answer immediately. He looked at the ruined battlefield display before him, the stars scarred with debris, and the planet below still burning. Finally, he spoke with quiet gravity. "No, it has only begun." For though the debt had been paid in blood, the echoes of what humanity had unleashed would ripple outward, shaking the foundations of empires yet untouched. The galaxy would not sleep easily now. Humanity's word had been proven, and with it came a promise of consequences none could ignore. The smoke had barely lifted from the Thauri capital when Elias Kane walked among the ruins. His boots crunched over shattered glass and alien stone, the air still thick with the acrid sting of plasma burns. Around him, Marines worked in silence, securing perimeters, dragging away wreckage, and tending to the wounded. The cries of the Thauri carried on the wind, soft, fragile voices filled with awe and disbelief. They had expected to be erased from history. Instead, they lived because humanity had come. Kane paused before the steps of the council hall, half collapsed from orbital bombardment. A group of Thalri elders emerged cautiously, their translucent skin bruised, their luminous eyes reflecting both fear and hope. One of them, the same elder Holt had pulled from death's grasp, bowed deeply, his trembling hands clutching the fragments of the ceremonial staff. "The debt, it is answered. We thought the oath forgotten, yet you came. We owe you everything." Cain shook his head, his voice quiet but firm. "No, you owe us nothing. The debt is paid in full." Behind him, Major Darius Holt stood with helmet tucked under his arm, the scars on his face marked by fresh burns from the battle. His eyes scanned the devastated city, taking in the wreckage of both human and Dominion bodies scattered through the streets. "This was no charity," Holt said, his tone like gravel. "It was honor. Our word means something, even if the rest of the galaxy forgot what that is." The elders bowed again, tears glistening at the edges of their alien eyes. The sight stirred something fierce in Cain's chest, a reminder of why he had chosen to lead this mission. Humanity had not come for conquest or profit. They had come because once, long ago, someone weaker had chosen to stand for them. That truth weighed more than any victory. News of the Dominion's retreat traveled with merciless speed. Across the galaxy, from glittering capitals to shadowed smuggler dens, the story spread. Humanity had not only challenged the Zeroth Dominion, but had broken them in open battle. Fear settled like frost in the hearts of rulers who had dismissed Earth as insignificant. If the species fought with such ferocity to honor a debt, what would they unleash against an enemy? If their word bound them so completely, what terror would follow betrayal? Cain stood on the bridge of the Resolute days later, listening as reports flooded in. Some empires were reinforcing borders, suspicious and afraid. Others sent envoys, suddenly eager to trade and negotiate. The Dominion itself had fallen silent, licking its wounds and humiliation. Cain could almost feel the ripples of fear extending outward, spreading across systems like a shadow. Humanity had declared itself, not with speeches but with fire. Voss approached, carrying a slate of new transmissions. He looked more worn than Cain had ever seen him. His uniform singed, his face pale from sleepless nights. "Every council is talking about us. Some call us reckless. Others are already petitioning for alliances. But the common thread," he hesitated, then allowed a thin smile. "They're afraid. Afraid of what we might do next." Cain did not smile. "Good. Let them be afraid. Fear will remind them that humanity is not to be dismissed. But fear alone is not enough. What matters is respect." Voss studied him quietly. "And if respect never comes, then they will learn the harder way," Cain replied, his gaze turning back to the stars. Holt entered the bridge then, his armor removed, but his presence no less formidable. He carried himself with the weight of a man who had led others into the jaws of death and pulled them out again, though not all had returned. His voice carried the blunt truth of a soldier who had no time for politics. "The men are restless. They know we won here, but they also know the Dominion isn't finished. They'll strike again. Harder." Cain regarded him steadily. "Then we prepare. The galaxy trembles now, not because we are invincible, but because we prove that our word is steel. That's what terrifies them, that we cannot be bought and we cannot be cowed." Holt's lips curled into a hard smile. "Then let them tremble." For a moment, silence stretched between the three men, each of them bearing their own understanding of what had been set in motion. This was more than a battle won. It was the birth of a reputation that could never be undone. Humanity's honor had been carved into the bones of the galaxy, and with it came consequences none of them could fully predict. The fleet began its long return toward Terran space, scarred but unbroken. Ships carried the stories of the fallen, names etched into data scripts that would be preserved for centuries. In every mess hall, soldiers spoke of the moment when Cain's broadcast echoed to the stars, when every enemy realized humanity had come not for conquest, but for a promise. That story spread even faster than the official reports, taking on the weight of legend before they reached home. When Earth came into view, Cain stood at the observation deck once more. He remembered the night the message had first arrived, the voice of a dying Thalri elder pleading for help. He remembered the debates, the doubt, the laughter of alien powers certain humanity would never act. Now, as the fleet prepared for docking. He thought of the oath fulfilled and the price paid. Voss joined him, his usual grin subdued by exhaustion. We kept our word, Elias. That should count for something. It does, Kane said, but it also paints a target on our backs. The Dominion will not forget their humiliation. And the others, some will seek our friendship, others our destruction. The galaxy will not be the same after this. Holt entered, his boots heavy against the deck. Then we'll face it, the same way we face this, with iron in our hands and fire in our hearts. Kane allowed himself the faintest smile, though it never reached his eyes. He knew Holt was right. Humanity had declared itself in blood and steel, and there would be no turning back. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. The fleet descended toward Earth's orbit. A storm returned home, its honor intact but its future uncertain. Kane gazed at the stars, his voice barely more than a whisper. The debt is repaid, but the story isn't finished. And as the galaxy watched with wary eyes, entire empires adjusting their course in fear of humanity's resolve, one truth became undeniable. The tremor had begun. What followed would shake the very foundations of the stars.